I can't stand Noah's crying. Like, speak mink and stop. I never thought there were still people who would say such a thing in this day and age. Just get out. Sleep on the streets, fine. Wait, what? I'll sleep wherever you want me to, so don't complain. My name is Lily, 28 years old. I'm currently on a break for childcare, but I'm working as a freelance illustrator. I love drawing from a young age. I've always been told by my parents and friends that I can't make a living just by drawing, but as a result of practicing without giving up, I was able to make a living out of it. By the way, the biggest job I've ever done was doing the illustrations for a famous novel that was also made into a movie. I'm proud to have had my artwork seen by many people, and of course, the payment was big. Before going freelance, I worked at a design company. I met my husband Liam through work. He praised my drawings and said they had infinite potential. He also supported my dream of going freelance. And my husband, who is 10 years older, is a very attractive and gorgeous man. I thought I could be happy with him, so I decided to marry him. And now, about a month after giving birth to our first child, Noah, I had just returned from my parents' house and was stunned by the chaotic state of our home. You're finally back. You've got a lot of cleaning to do. The floor was barely visible due to the mess. Clothes were strewn about, and of course they weren't washed. The room was filled with a rotten smell of trash. It was so suffocating that I rushed to the window. Since the birth of my son, I had been living at my parents' house. My mother had passed away when I was a student. I was hesitant to stay with my father, who lives alone, but I was persuaded to stay for just 1 month. My mother-in-law, who lives nearby, was supposed to take care of my husband during this time. So what happened? Actually, my mom hurt her back. She couldn't come to do the housework, and it was tough. But it's good you're back now. Clean up. I just got back and you were telling me to do the chores. And I need to feed Noah first. You can do that later. Just finish it today. Saying that, he quickly retreated to that room. He doesn't seem to have any intention of cleaning up. I cannot forget the time when I was suffering from morning sickness. Lady, I'm hungry. My husband demanded food with an attitude suggesting it's only natural for me to serve him. Back then, I could only eat jelly and was exhausted from feeling sick all day, but he had the audacity to wake me up and demand me to make dinner, despite explaining the situation multiple times and asking him to prepare food for himself. He would say something like pregnancy isn't a sickness. Do you not care about me at all? Without any hesitation. Reluctantly, I tried to make something light that doesn't have a strong smell, only to hear him declare I want a pork cutlet. Even when I pleaded with tears, saying please spare me, just passing by the deli section of the supermarket makes me feel nauseous. He becomes sullen and moody. No, I want pork cutlet, but he wouldn't buy it or order delivery. I want you to make it and eat it freshly fried, he says, puffing up his cheeks like a child and throwing a tantrum on the sofa. I end up giving in just to get it over with, wanting to be freed from the frustration. Even with a mask on while frying, the unique smell can't be fully blocked. Despite my face turning pale and feeling nauseous and dizzy, my husband eating his pork cutlets contentedly doesn't even seem to notice. There are countless other outrageous episodes with my husband. I've been forced to accompany him on sudden trips during my 8 to 9-month pregnancy. And even when I'm drowsy, he forces me to play games with him. I've explained multiple times that hormonal changes during pregnancy cause extreme drowsiness, but he doesn't seem to get it. Listen, or maybe he just doesn't want to. Of this all this, the image I had of my husband before marriage has completely collapsed. To be honest, I've lost the confidence to raise a child together with him. The only reason I endure without thinking of divorce is for the sake of our child. Being a single parent isn't unusual these days, but there's still a perception that it's better for both parents to be present. Still, the lingering attachment to my husband is due to the hope that he might change once he sees our child. But needless to say, such hopes were shattered. As on the first night after returning from my parents' house, after cleaning up the mess my husband made, I breastfed and went to sleep. Naturally, our newborn son needs to be fed during the night. I learned at the obstetric clinic that newborns require feeding every 3 hours, but our son gets hungry every 2 hours and cries loudly. Just with his big body, he cried louder than one would expect from a newborn. To avoid disturbing my husband's sleep from having to get up multiple times during the night, my son and I decided to sleep in the living room. Hey, it's too noisy. It's so loud. What are you doing? Keep it quiet. Can't you see I'm making milk? Our son doesn't seem to get full from only breast milk, so I've been giving him warm milk each time I feed him. I have to add hot water and wait for it to reach body temperature, which takes quite a while. It's if only I could produce enough breast milk, we wouldn't have to spend extra money, and the house would be quieter. Why can't you? Maybe you lack maternal instincts? But what I was furious at was my husband's unreasonable outburst, but the priority was our son. Once he had his fill of milk, he drifted into a satisfied sleep. Just don't let him cry. It's so loud. I can't sleep. It's normal for babies to cry. And to handle his nighttime crying, Noah and I sleep in the living room. But what more do you want me to do? Maybe you should just wear earplugs? Figure it out, he said, shouting at me one-sidedly before returning to his room. My head felt like it was about to explode from anger. And if only all mothers could somehow prevent their babies from crying. Babies crying at night makes childcare harder. I understand that not being able to sleep is hard, but I feel the same. Yet, him acting like the victim and shouting is inexcusable. The nighttime crying continued as expected, leading to arguments with my husband each time. At one point, he even told me to leave the house. You want to kick me and Noah out? It's neither hot nor cold right now, so it's fine. It's much harder for me to be disturbed in my sleep. My husband said such unbelievable things with no remorse. I was so shocked by what he said that I couldn't sleep much that night. The following night, we had another huge fight. I repeatedly asked him to wear earplugs, but he refused. Even when I nursed our son in the farthest room from our bedroom, the crying reached him and he kept yelling and berating me. Even without that, dealing with our son's nighttime feedings left me exhausted, and dealing with my enraged husband added more stress. Initially, he had opposed my 1-month return to my parents' house. He said it was unthinkable for me to live and relax while neglecting my duties at home. However, when he learned that babies cry at night during my pregnancy, he suddenly agreed to the idea of me returning to my parents. Still, staying for several months at my elderly father's farm where he lived alone wasn't feasible. I returned home before a month had passed. I should have stayed at my father's a bit longer. Maybe I should consult my father, but he would ask why. I wanted to avoid causing him any unnecessary worry. Worn down by continuous arguments with my husband and the baby's night cries, there came a time when my husband hardly ever came home. He's probably staying at his in-laws' house to escape the baby's crying at night. I didn't pay much attention to it. It's been about a week since my husband stopped coming home. Finally, the notice for the 1-month checkup arrived. At the maternity clinic where I gave birth, they had reduced the number of patients they accepted for checkups due to an outbreak of an infectious disease. So it's actually been about a month and tough. Fortunately, my son was able to complete the checkup without any issues. I consulted about the short interval of breastfeeding, but I only received a general recommendation. Received a generic answer that some kids are like that after the checkup. My son and I went shopping at the supermarket and then headed home, but no matter how much I tried, the key wouldn't fit and the door wouldn't budge. What's going on? In a panic, I checked the key. The key is different. Did I go to the wrong house? We checked multiple times, wondering if I mistakenly went to someone else's home, but it didn't seem that way. Could it be? I couldn't believe it, but my intuition whispered to me. My husband did something. I called his mobile phone many times, but he didn't answer. During this time, my son began to fuss. With no other choice, I bought a bottle and powdered milk and rushed to a nearby hotel. After finally calming down, I waited until night to call my husband again. "Oh, Lily, where are you now?" "There's no food for me here. I couldn't get into the house, so I'm staying at a hotel. Did you do something?" "The key is weird."
Oh, I forgot about that. My husband laughed carelessly on the other end of the phone.
"Why?"
It's because you can't keep the baby quiet, no matter how many times you say you will.
I didn't want to do this, but I had to protect myself. "I can't believe you did this," I said in a tone full of contempt.
Adita, you know how hard it's been for me lately with the lack of sleep?
"Don't come back until the baby stops crying at night. Sleep on the streets or whatever." I couldn't stop my anger at his unbelievable statement. Still pinching my arm, I managed to hold it back. "Fine, but don't complain about where I sleep. I can't possibly sleep on the streets with a 0-year-old baby." Then I smiled slyly as I looked inside my wallet. My husband doesn't know yet that I have a credit card under his name in my wallet. Fortunately, I had it with me today, as I needed it for some card procedures. "Noah, we can take it easy from tomorrow." From the next day onwards, I traveled from one hotel to another with my son. Since I was kicked out with just the clothes on my back, I had to buy everything again, including things for my son. Once all expenses were paid with my husband's card, we decided to stay at a hotel that promotes a family-friendly environment. That promotes itself as baby-friendly. This was to prevent any inconvenience to other guests due to our baby's nighttime crying. All of these costs were also charged to my husband's card. As advertised, a baby-friendly lodge, they had plenty of baby goods. I was able to spend some relaxing time with my son. I continued my luxurious lifestyle using my husband's card for a month. Then I received a furious call from him. It seemed the bill went to him, and as expected, the amount was astronomical. Of course, we have been living in hotels for the past month.
Hey, there's a huge charge on the card. Did you steal my card?
Don't say it like I'm a criminal. I had it because you left it with me for work.
You were the one to go ahead who got it and kicked me out.
Remember, I told you not to complain, no matter where I stay.
But you need to work part-time or whatever to repay the amount you've spent.
What you did is theft.
If you don't repay it, I will report you to the police.
Do you really have the nerve while having an affair? Yes, my husband, who had stopped coming home, was living with his workplace subordinate, his mistress. After Tishan, in fact, I had become suspicious of my husband's activities and had secretly hired a detective to investigate. I had obtained definitive evidence. Moreover, what was unforgivable was that on the day he kicked out me and our son, he apparently brought his mistress home. A photograph clearly captured my husband and his mistress, arm in arm, entering our house.
Please forgive me, it was just a fling with my subordinate. You are the one for me, Lily.
My husband trying to approach me apologetically. There was a time when I found even such actions endearing, but now they only irritate me. No, let's divorce. If we divorce now, I will offset what I used against the compensation you owe me. I proposed to my husband, who wanted to settle things as soon as possible by waiving the compensation he owed me. To waive the compensation, I intended to firmly take child support, but I felt I no longer needed the alimony. Don't you think it's a good deal? It would be cheaper than the going rate for compensation. My revenge wasn't over yet. I made a condition that Liam offset the amount spent on luxury life for a month with the compensation he paid to me. However, there was nothing written about claiming compensation from the mistress. I had no intention of forgiving the other woman. I involved a lawyer and took legal action, receiving $1 billion in compensation from the mistress.
However, the one who couldn't remain silent was the mistress.
She was dissatisfied, feeling she was unfairly made to pay, and she ranted loudly at Liam's workplace, revealing his misdeeds to everyone. Wait a minute, don't say things like that. But it was too late. That his desperate attempts to explain only made him seem more deceitful, and none of his colleagues believed him. In the end, once promising ex-husband was demoted to a subsidiary in the countryside. Taking during the period leading up to the transfer, he was treated coldly and female employees gossiped about him and ignored him, making it extremely tough for him. Meanwhile, I sold a nursery for my son with my father's help and resumed my work as an illustrator. If I could secure contracts like before, I could earn twice the living expenses that my ex-husband used to make. I can raise my son perfectly fine on my own. Achin, honestly, I feel guilty for depriving my newborn son of his father. But I think it's better to have a single parent than having parents with toxic relationships. Nor you slept well last night, didn't you? Just by the third month, the nightly crying became a bit better. Still, small babies cry loudly to convey their feelings. We as parents have an obligation to listen to that voice. You're hungry, aren't you? That's why a father wouldn't kick out his family just because the baby cried.